We are going to do what we call a standalone message today. I'm going to talk about needs and wants in just a minute. But before I get there, I just want to take a minute and address all this tension we have in our world, in our country, and maybe even in our community that's been going on for the last week, months, years. I don't know how long it's been. And I need to tell you this, and some of you don't know me, so my name's Matt. It's nice to meet you, and a lot of you do. And if you're online, you're part of this equally too, is I feel just a little grieved over all that's transpired in the last 7 days. I just feel a little grieved, and I'll talk through this in a minute. But I feel grieved because I feel like Christians or Jesus followers or church people like me and like some of you, and some of you are so new to this, you're like, I'm not a church person, so you just kind of watch us dialogue through this over the next just few minutes. I feel like Christians have decided we're going to judge people outside the church. And that troubles me because the Apostle Paul, and you may not know this, the Apostle Paul literally gives the church instructions not to judge those outside the church. In other words, don't expect people that don't believe what we believe to believe what we believe and live the way we live. He literally says, who am I to judge those outside the church? And I feel like that's happened a little bit in the last week and 2 weeks or years from a church perspective. But what maybe has even grieved me more as a pastor and a Jesus follower, and I've certainly been part of this problem at times in my past, is I've watched church people or Christians treat other Christians or brothers or sisters in Christ poorly around social issues. And I know social issues matter, so I'm not saying that at all, but I feel like that we have not loved each other well, and I want to talk about this just for a minute. And so in order to do that, I need you to give me just 5 good minutes, PTI watchers, this is 5 good minutes, and I need you guys not to respond at all, but just listen to me for a few minutes. Because I've seen some stuff that you've seen, and when we turn on social media or the news or what's going on in our world, there is a lot of fist shaking on both sides right now. And you know this, the church is never at its best when we shake our fist at anything. And everybody's participated in it on all sides of the aisle. We have shaken our fist, and maybe you've seen some of these big statements, because I have. Like, hey, we finally won, shake our fist. That was said this week around Roe versus Wade. Or maybe someone else shook their fist around, abortion is health care, shake my fist. Celebrating an end to the murder of millions, shake my fist. We're so right about that. My body, my choice, lean into that. Here's another big statement. Women will die because of this. This day will be seen as liberation. And I read this last night. If you're happy about the SCOTUS decision, we are no longer friends. It's just over. It's time to be done with this. And here's what I want you to know, and I acknowledge this, that there's validity to some degree, in some way, in all these statements somehow. And what we all feel is passion around this. And I think this is why this is such an electrified issue. But this issue this week has been so electrified, it feels like if anybody touches each other on the other side, we just want to electrocute each other. And I understand why. There's so much passion as we view this and see this from our perspective, and that's valid. So I'm not saying any of the ideas and points that are being made by what other side are not valid. But I need a minute, and this is emotional for me. I need a minute to talk to the people that follow Jesus, that are part of our crew. And so if you're not a Jesus follower, you just watch us work through this, because Jesus said something that gives us a baseline for all of this. And I'm going right to it because I just don't have enough time to mess around with this today. Jesus sat his followers down right before he would go to the cross and give his life. And he said this, he said, by this, guys, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. If you love one another. How do you know that you're a Christian, a Jesus follower, a church person? When you love one another. Not by being right, not by making a point, not by being angry, but by loving one another. And I recognize that love is not always easy, and sometimes there's tough love. I get all that. But the example of this is when Jesus went and he laid down his life for people like me when I was at my very worst, and people like you when you were at your very worst. He loved us. And I'll say something that might, be good for some of you to hear and discourage others of you here. I think everybody matters to God. And I don't want anybody to respond to this, but I think everybody matters to God from fetus to the funeral. Which means if you're 104 years old and you're watching from the nursing home, I think you matter to us and to God. And if you're 6 weeks old and you're not getting the proper care and love and whatever you need from this world, that we have to do better as a church because you matter to God. And I think you matter to God if you have not come into this world yet, but you have a heartbeat. I think all that matters to God. I just believe that. You need to know that about my perspective and the way I understand things. But here's the other thing I know. For years we said around this place that Jesus loved people that were nothing like him. And I'm not like Jesus nearly enough. But Jesus loved people, and he liked people that were nothing like him, which meant Jesus loved people and liked people who did not agree with his viewpoints. Jesus loved and he liked people that did not talk like him or believe like him or vote like him. He loved them no matter what. And the amazing, astounding thing is those same people liked to be around Jesus, even though they were nothing like him, because he loved them so well. And my heart that grieves just a little bit for us is with these hot, passionate issues, which there's a reason they're so passionate, and I get that, is that we forget in the middle of it, we're to love people. And so no matter what your viewpoint is, now how you see the world, I want to remind you of something about Jesus. And I'm convinced as Christians, we should take the same posture as Jesus. And this was Jesus's posture. We're told this by John, who was Jesus's good friend. He said the Word, talking about Jesus, became flesh, and he made his dwelling among us. Somehow God decided to step out of heaven and be with dirty, rotten, filthy sinners like me that had it all wrong. And we have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father full of, and I love this, grace and truth. And we are in a season where everybody wants to throw truth in every direction. On every social media thing and every opinion and every blog. I mean, this is the truth, this is the truth, this is the truth. And somehow I feel like maybe we might just miss grace. That I love you in spite of you. And I value you in spite of you. Even though I still have a strong thought and opinion on things, I am full of grace. And I need to say something to those of us that are real Jesus followers. People are watching. People that don't believe what we believe are watching. We created this church that unchurched people would love to come. And now people are watching, and they think differently than we think, and they believe differently maybe than some of us think, but they're watching how we treat one another on the outside, but especially on the inside. And there is no margin for error for us not to love one another. And so I'm just calling you, would you be known as a follower of Jesus, not by your political view, not by how you voted, not by how you rally around a constitutional decision. Those are all fine things. I'm asking you, would you be known as a Christian how you love people along the way? And I got asked by our band, because I said this to our band to vet it out just a little bit, and I said, you have any thoughts? Because I'm going to say this to everybody this morning. And one of the comments came back was, well, how do we love people that think differently? And I'm going to give you 2 ways. You ready? And then we're going to move on. But these are big ways. The first way may be to limit or just stop trying to make your point on social media. You could clap for that one if you wanted to, but you don't have to. And I appreciate that. Please, please, please stop making points on social media. Have a conversation, and we should have conversations. Have conversations with people in the room. And I need you to know this, that if you're totally on the other side of the aisle than me, you totally are in a place that I am not, you are welcome to sit at a table with me, and we can have a kind conversation full of grace, and I'd love to hear your side of the story, whatever it is. And if you agree with me, but you're too vigorous, well, you can sit at the table with me and we'll talk about it and work through it. Stop posting every thing on social media to make points. And the second thing, just do this if you're a follower of Jesus, if you are, is simply this. View everybody you're mad at right now as someone that was created in the image of God, as someone that Jesus died for and gave every ounce of his blood for, just like he did for you. And let's love each other, have opinions, believe truth, but love with all that you are, no matter where you're coming from. And the church will have the effect and the power it did in the first century.